elegant, successful, beautiful, classy, unique, purpose, empowered, strong, overcomer, free, powerful. She rises. Hey there, and welcome to Successful.
Beautiful.
And
I'm Natalie,
I'm Nikki.
I'm Tonyeka.
and we welcome you back to our program, our podcast. So if you have not liked, shared, subscribed, and did the little bell thingy. I think I'm going to do that every time. The bell thingy. That's a visual for you.
Yes.
So you'll know when we have
Come on,
posted
Nikki.
the bell thingy. We welcome you back, and thank you so much for joining us. We are still talking about successful, beautiful, and the First Lady.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I wanted us to talk today a bit about mental health in ministry, right?
Okay.
Okay. Mental health in ministry.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be fabulous. Okay. So when I think about mental health, I think about my passion, my love. That's what I do. I think about our brains, how we process information, how we take things in. We take in people's lives in ministry. Yeah. We take in they're good, they're bad, they're ugly. We support them, or we did support them in that. We poured back into their lives. We were talked about. We were appreciated. We were lied on. We were dragged through the mud.
Yes.
We were minimized. We were placed on pedestals that we did not belong on. Just so many things were put into our lives, not picked up and placed into our lives on our own. They were put into our lives.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of things that we had to process mentally, right? And we'll talk about emotions at some point, but mentally we had to process some of those things. Well, when we process information, there are things that happen in our brains, right? And so I'd ask Nikki, the biology professor,
Oh, Lord.
the brains, the brain,
Yes.
the professor.
Yes.
But I'd ask her, Nikki, do men and women process information differently, like physically in our brains? Do we process information differently?
We do.
Okay.
We do.
Okay.
So when it comes to men and women, of course, we're different. Women's brains are smaller. Men's brains are larger. And then there's the whole, and I don't want to be too scientific, but there's a part of the brain called the gray matter. So what happens is when it comes to processing, I think you all can attest to this, where we know that men can compartmentalize better than women, because for us, everything kind of flows together.
Yeah.
Right. So that's biologically true. And it all boils down to the amygdala, which is a structure in the brain that helps us process emotions. So women, we are emotional creatures by nature. So yes, we do process things differently.
Okay. Okay.
Come on, Professor.
Yes.
Shout out to Professor Tenor.
Yes.
Because my friends are smart. Okay. So mental health in ministry. I read an article earlier today, and it made me really, really sad. It talked about a pastor's wife that from the pictures, and I'm not sure how old the pictures were, but they had younger children. They were still, carrying them. They were, 5, 6 or whatever, but they were still, able to be picked up or whatnot. She committed suicide.
Wow.
Sad.
And evidently had shared with people the extreme overwhelm of ministry and the impact that it had had on her mental health, on her marriage, on her thoughts about parenting, on her care for people, just it wore her out.
Mm-hmm.
Ministry wore her out. It wore her down. It, I dare even say, beat her down, if you will. And it didn't necessarily go into, those kind of details in regards to, maybe what people may have done or whatnot, but it was more ministry related than anything. That was the overwhelm for her that bled over into their personal lives. So we diving real deep right here. Okay. Mental health for you in ministry, and considering all of the things that we talked about last time. How would you say, or did you even recognize? Let me ask that first. Did you even recognize the depth of ministry and how it has impacted you mentally?
No.
I didn't either. T?
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry, because this is real. This is our life.
I would say, oftentimes when we read those kind of stories, like you said, we like, wow, what happened or what? But I would say people can be so cruel, as well as a hardship in marriage. It can be rough.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming if you don't get the help that you need.
Absolutely.
And so I'm a firm believer that a support group and a therapist is essential before you get to that point, because people that commit suicide, they feel like there's no hope. And sometimes in ministry and doing this kind of work,
you feel that
I
way.
felt hopeless before.
Yeah.
And you can't go to share that with anybody. They're going to judge you and then go spread the word. Tonyeka called me and said, blah, blah, blah. So I get it, but there's always hope. There's hope in Jesus.
Absolutely.
And so I would encourage anyone, before you feel that overwhelm, get help.
Yeah.
It's important.
I didn't realize. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nikki.
I was going to say, in addition to that, let's not forget that we come into ministry with our own struggles and shortcomings.
Yeah.
And I can speak for myself specifically. I never have had a relationship with my biological father. So, going through that with rejection, and now I'm carrying this baggage, but I'm still showing up, to minister and help and pray and support and love on these people when I have my own issues that I haven't dealt with because I didn't know that I was carrying these things.
Yeah.
And that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And I think that just because we're placed in ministry, I think that I know for me, I'll say for me specifically, felt like I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't okay, I wouldn't be here.
I wouldn't be here. God wouldn't have called me.
He
to
wouldn't have
this.
called me. He wouldn't have placed me here.
Yeah.
So I must be fine.
Yeah. So you said that, so that triggered a thought for me. Before you talked about us carrying our stuff into ministry. Before I even met the ex-husband, I was married. I was engaged to another gentleman that died. I was 19 years old when I met him. Fell in love immediately. An amazing, amazing, amazing man. And at that point, I had thought, I will never, ever get married because of things that I had seen and experienced growing up. But he changed my mind about marriage. And so we were engaged. The plan was for me to finish graduate school or undergrad. We were going to move to the ATL. I was going to go to Georgia Tech, get my master's degree, my doctorate, but we were going to get married after I got my master's degree. Then I would go back and get my doctorate, and we'd live happily ever after. But one Wednesday, we were going out, or so I thought, and I had gone to class, had gone home afterward, changed clothes, went to his apartment, and when he opened the door, I was like, "What you wearing? Because you're not wearing that for us to go out." And he was like, "Oh, babe, I'm gonna go fishing with Pastor." And I was like, "But we had plans." And so he's like, I know, but I really want to go. So I'm mad, and showed that I was mad or whatever, and he's apologetic, whatever. And so he leaves. And then he comes back less than 5 minutes later to tell me that he loves me and kisses me and hugs me, and he leaves. And that was the last time that I saw him. So I went on to choir rehearsal, and during choir rehearsal, one of the ladies said, "Nat, get up and go outside." And I was like, "What?" And so she said, "You need to get up and go outside." So I go out, and a dear, 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 dear friend of mine was out there waiting for me. And she was like, "Nat, walk with me." And so our church was super tiny. So we're literally like walking the perimeter of the church because, again, it was really, really small. And initially she was holding my hand, and we're walking around. And she said, "They can't find him." And then I said, "Oh, he went fishing with Pastor." And so she said, "I know. They can't find him in the water." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And I was like, "Why would he be in the water? He can't swim." And she said, "I know." And so at this point, she now has her arm around me, because I guess I don't realize that my knees are buckling, And the next thing I remember is me laying on the ground, and like I could see the pebbles of rocks on the ground as I'm laying there flat, my face like on the ground. And she laid down there with me to be there with me. Next thing I remember, somebody walked into the office. They had taken me into the pastor's office. Somebody walked into the office. I remember they had on some white K-Swiss tennis shoes. I remember that. And then the next thing that I remember was a gentleman that had on some jeans that were muddy, and his boots were muddy. And he kept saying, "Miss Natalie, I tried to get to him. Miss Natalie, I tried to get to him." I remember that. And then the next thing that I remember is me being at my mom's apartment, and I was standing in the window, and I was so angry. This was the next morning. I was so angry because the sun was shining and people were outside laughing, and I could hear them. I was angry that life had continued. I was angry, that people were happy, and my life had literally been turned upside down in one day, right? So that was then. 2 months later, a good friend of mine invited me to go to church to hear her cousin preach his first sermon. Okay, because she was like, "You need to get out of the house." Okay, so I go to church. I had to work, so I got there later. Missed him preaching his first sermon. That was the day that I married the man that I married, right? Or that wasn't the day that I married him. It was the day that I met him, or whatnot. And we married 4 years later. What did not happen from that point that my fiance had died to the time that I got married, I never grieved. Because I was a 19-year-old girl, 19, 20-year-old girl that had no idea what grief was. I was a psychology major, but I didn't know that stuff yet, And if I did know the information, I certainly didn't know how to apply it. So I am experiencing this weight, this heaviness, all of this trauma, but I don't know it. And there was nobody around me to say, "Nat, you need to go to therapy. You need to talk to somebody. You need to process through this. You need to deal with this. You need to, all of the things." I still had times when I would see certain things that would make me cry, all of the stuff. And I'd never processed that. And then I got married, So what I brought into marriage was a ton of grief, a ton of hurt, and then childhood stuff that I had never, ever dealt with, brought all of that into marriage, And so then I marry, and infidelity starts 6 months into the relationship. So my answer to all of that, to cover me, to protect me or whatnot, was food. I'm not going to do drugs because I'm not going to put something in my system that I can't control. I'm out of control of me. I'm not going to overdrink because I did that when I was a freshman in college. Your kids probably did too.
Don't judge me.
Yes. Don't judge me. I drink a lot. Yes. But my choice was food, because something else that we don't necessarily do in the church is talk about gluttony.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other thing. But I was definitely experiencing that. So I ate and I ate and I ate and I ate, because I was already grievous and dealing with trauma and all of those things. And then I get married, and then there's infidelity that starts. So there's more traumatic experiences, and food just seemed like an easy thing to do, you know? So I'm experiencing depression, but I don't really know that. And by this time, I still wasn't a therapist just yet. I was still in school. So I'm experiencing all of these things. So I am depressed. I am anxious. I am insecure. I am gaining weight, you know, now. And I don't like it because I had never been that size before in my life, you know, kind of thing. And it just kept going and kept going because all of the things kept going and kept going. And this was always my coping mechanism, you know. So for me, it was depression. It was anxiety. It was overeating. It was insecurity, discomfort with myself, not liking me, you know, all of the things. But my hair was cute and my clothes were cute, even though I had on some pantyhose, you know, at some point, you know. So I presented fake, but I didn't even know that it was fake. Yeah. That was me. That was my story.
That was your reality, though.
That was my reality.
So it wasn't fake to you.
Right, not at all.
Because that was your reality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So something that I have found now that God has healed, praise God.
Thank you, Jesus.
And I have learned in doing some work with some former pastors' wives is that, and then even having the opportunity to work with some couples that are in ministry. I really appreciate that when I have that opportunity. And they do too. Once they realize where I come from, they're like, oh, thank God. You understand.
A safe place.
A safe place. But codependency, that was huge for me. You know, that was huge for me. And that I took on the stuff, you know, from him, from others or whatnot, in order for everything to look right and everybody to be all right, even though I was dying inside. I wanted everybody to be good, you know? Did you guys ever experience anything like that, or any depression or anxiety or anything in regards to mental health in ministry?
I would say absolutely. I experience depression and anxiety. And it was rough until I made the decision to go and get help. Because I think for many Christians, we often look at therapy and we judge. We say, oh, she going to therapy because she crazy. And that's so not true. You're going to therapy so you won't go crazy. Not going to therapy will drive you crazy. And so it's important. And it's just like doctors. We don't bleed a trail of blood every day and not go to the doctor, right? We don't go to work and they're like, oh, there's Nikki and the trail of blood. We're going to go to the doctor to say, doctor, I need help. I need to stop this blood. Same as we going to the therapist to say, hey, I need to work through these things. The distorted thinking. I need to work through that. But instead, we project it on other people and we want them to accept it.
Or we swallow it.
We swallow it.
And it destroys it, eats away at us.
One of the things that I accepted was a statement being said to me of, I knew the Lord was going to move in this next service, because the enemy was busy. And so, but there was no resolve to what the enemy was trying to do. The victory comes. That we can say, I knew the enemy, the Lord was going to move, because when the enemy was trying to destroy, I made sure that me and my wife were on the same page. We stopped. We worked through it. We prayed. So now I knew that the Lord was going to move, because we got the victory. It's not that. It's just we leave things unfinished.
Unaddressed.
And say that it's fixed because
we prayed about it.
Because we prayed about it, or the Lord moved. But there's a natural piece to this too.
And taking our jobs more seriously, because God called us to do this. We're not just doing it, we get to do it.
Absolutely. There's a privilege.
And
an honor.
To worship at your throne. That's a song. Okay, so as high level as we possibly can, because I don't believe in speaking about someone else's mental health because we are not them.
Right.
However, we can be the recipient of the results of their mental health. So I want to make sure that that's clear. And not saying that a person is a thing based on our thoughts or opinions, but based on the facts,
Right.
if you will. So mental health of your ex-husband in ministry.
I don't think we have time.
Oh. I love Nikki. Nikki is my friend for real. Cut. Oh my God. Woo! Girl, I wasn't expecting that. Went from crying to laughing. Oh my God. Woo!
All right. Sounded like she was going to do the commercial. I don't think we have time. We're out of time. Thank you for joining us. And I was like,
oh my gosh. Okay. I didn't even know what to say. Woo. Okay. Where them fans at? Oh my gosh. Okay, let me say something.
Jesus.
Broad stroke. Woo. What I know for sure is that there's a lot of depression in ministry for senior leaders.
Yeah.
Whether that is a man or a woman, because ministry is heavy, it's weighty,
Yes.
as we've said before. And if there is a mindset, like you were just saying, Tonyeka, that we just do this stuff, we have the victory, but we haven't done anything, and we look at therapy as, you going to therapy? As like this slight, or this thing against God, opposed to it being a tool that God uses.
Yes.
Like he uses the cardiologist and the ophthalmologist
Absolutely.
and the dentist and the
Yes.
podiatrist and, the biologist and all of them. I think that a lot of senior leaders have dismissed the need for mental health treatment, therapy, or whatnot, and are ashamed that there is a need because of those expectations, going back to the other portion that we talked about, those expectations that people have that you're going to do things right. You're going to do everything the right way. So there's a minimizing of the need. There's a brushing under the rug of the things that are wrong, or for certain personality types. And we'll delve into this a lot more in some other episode. But in a narcissistic personality type or an antagonistic personality type, the thought that I don't need therapy, I'm good, you're the problem. So I think that, again, broad stroke, that those are some things that are in place in a lot of senior leadership mindsets. So much so that even if there are things that may have occurred years ago that they never ever deal with, but then they pop up.
There's always the pop up.
There's always a pop up.
Always, because if you don't address it,
it's
not
coming
going to
again.
go away.
It doesn't go away.
You can't sweep it you can sweep it under the rug, but guess what? It's going to come out.
You're going to trip over that rug at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, just like I mentioned before, how I came to ministry with these issues, oh my goodness, so do pastors.
Yeah.
And, I think it's unfortunate that there's not some type of psych exam or personality assessment or something.
That's good.
Prior to,
Thank you.
I mean,
prior to them becoming a pastor.
Absolutely, because there's so many lives at stake.
Yeah, it really is.
And granted, none of us are perfect.
Right.
None of us are perfect.
No.
But I just I mean, the responsibility is so great.
It
Yeah.
is.
And I think that is something that should not be taken
For granted.
lightly.
That is really good.
It is.
I wonder if there are any denominations or anything, like, do they require that those that place pastors, I wonder if they do things like that. I don't know
I don't know.
in regards to that.
Mhm.
But then I think about those that those that planted
Mhm.
their own ministries.
Mhm.
You know, who's who gonna check you, boo?
Right,
You know,
exactly.
because there is nobody in place.
Right.
Because
No
it's yours.
accountability. Right.
You know, it is strictly yours.
Mhm.
And if there is any accountability put into place, it's because you put them there.
Yeah.
So then you get to pick and choose what your accountability looks like.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
whether it's somebody that's never ever going to hold you accountable,
Wow.
somebody that may slightly hold you accountable, somebody that's just going to pat you on the back and say, we really need to do something different, Pastor.
Yes.
You know, but then we never do anything different because you
Right.
don't want to do anything
You don't want
different.
to do anything different.
Which is
Yeah.
why they're in that position to begin with, because you get to orchestrate
Yeah.
and manipulate
Mhm.
and put the pieces where you want them to be so
Yep.
you can do what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, keeping along that same vein, in regards to mental health, and not to, again, speak to anyone else's mental health, but because of observation or needing to support or things of that nature. I want to talk about our kids really quickly. Again, high level, because I know I haven't gotten permission from my children to like dig deep and share things. The impact of ministry on children.
Oh,
That's
that's
you know, there's that saying, or I'm sorry, the I guess a saying when people talk about oh, well, you know, preachers' kids, or you know, the pastor's kids. There are these expectations that they're going to be failures. There's that expectation that they are going to be drug addicts. There's the expectation that they're going to be pregnant. The expectation that they're, you know, not going to be anything. They're going to be gay. There's the expectation that they're going to be anything but holy and healthy and right and prosperous. And, you know, lots of people have those thoughts. And to be fair, I believe a lot more people don't believe those things. However, the thoughts are out there. And I know for my children, they knew the thoughts, you know, that some people had in regards to pastors' children. The mental health. Did ministry impact, affect, or infect your children?
I think it did impact. And I would just, you know, broad stroke, but just you know, just an example would be if their father couldn't make a game or a performance because of a meeting or a Bible study. You know, that was, you know, as kids, you know, they get it, but then do they really?
Yeah.
You know,
That's good.
They're still disappointed.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then how do you deal with all of the disappointments of, you know, and I'm not saying that he never attended any games,
Right.
or, you know, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, you know, for the times when the schedule wouldn't permit it, you know, I got to hear about, you know, I wish Dad could have seen that, or, you know,
I
that
was
kind
going to
of
say,
thing.
because then you have to deal with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have to buffer and cover
Yeah.
and, you know.
Yeah. What about you, T? You think ministry infected?
Of course, impacted. As long as we were, you know, in it, they were growing up. I can't think of an example right now, so I would just stick to definitely impacted, but I can't give an example.
Yeah. I'll definitely say yes to that. Yes, I'll say yes to that.
Yeah.
And a negative impact, and I can even say infected my children. Yeah, and hopefully they'll give us permission at some point.
Yeah.
To be able to talk a bit more, because you know, I don't mind telling, you know, but it's their life. So I don't want to put anything out there.
Right.
But I do want, but if they definitely were to say, yeah, Mom, you can talk about it, I absolutely will, because I think that people need to know that.
Yeah.
You know, that ministry, again, is not this glitz and glamour. And we'll talk more about that in our next episode. We'll talk about the women that approach your husband or call your husband with their stuff, or we'll talk about those things. We'll talk about the dismission of you as a wife in certain scenarios. We'll talk about the things that the perks that people think come along with ministry, or that it's like worth the perks. We'll talk about all of that stuff. Okay.
The wannabe first ladies.
The you don't want to be.
You don't.
Yeah. So we'll talk about all of those things. Y'all have anything to add before we close out?
No, this was really good. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was good.
This segment, yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, thank y'all. I love y'all.
Love
you too.
I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
Thank you all so much for joining Successful.
Beautiful.
And
we appreciate you. Again, be sure to go like, share, subscribe, and the bell thingy. Have an amazing day. Bye.
bye.
The content shared on this podcast is intended for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. While one of our hosts is a licensed professional counselor, the information provided here does not constitute a therapeutic relationship, nor is it a substitute for individualized mental health treatment or diagnosis. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-therapist relationship between you and our hosts. Any stories, examples, or discussions are either fictional, generalized, or used with permission for illustrative purposes and should not be taken as personalized therapeutic guidance. If you are in need of mental health support, we encourage you to consult with a licensed mental health professional in your area. If you are in crisis or experiencing a mental health emergency, please contact 911, your local crisis line, or 988, the National Suicide Crisis Lifeline. Thank you so much and enjoy the show.